Hello there, and welcome to another episode of StarrCast. You know, it's really difficult to run a spa or well-being facility. There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of complications, and today we're speaking with someone who knows that all too well because he's responsible for running over 500. So I would like to welcome Emlyn Brown, the Global Director of Wellbeing and VP for Accor, as I said, globally, many brands and many properties around the world. And Emlyn has joined us today to talk about his journey to the top, as it were, how he came to be in this position. And we'll close with where he sees us going from here, because he's got lots of interesting information and perspective on that. So welcome, Emlyn. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Lisa. It's a pleasure to join you today and good to see you again.
Thank you. You as well. So, Emlyn, you grew up in England.
A little bit, yeah. It's a bit of a mixed story. My father was with the military. So I spent most of my time either in the UK or living abroad, most of my time in Germany, for example, in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I went to about 13 schools up until about graduating when I was 18 and did a lot of traveling and moving around from one base to the other. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag. When people ask me where I'm from, it can be quite challenging sometimes to say where.
Do you think that sort of nomadic upbringing helped you for a role in hospitality?
I think it probably helped me and also probably kicked me in that direction because the
Mm-hmm.
wanderlust was always pretty strong inside me. I think it also, creates an environment where as a young person you learn to engage and deal with many different types of people, different nationalities and different locations, and you're constantly moving and having to adapt yourself individually. And I suppose the most insightful period that I had was when I was living in Munich in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was at high school. I went to international school there for 3 years. And during that time, I had about 35 or 40 different nationalities within my class and my group. And that was a very different type of educational experience that I suppose, again, ignited the idea of travel, that ignited the idea of working with different nationalities in different places. And that sort of stuck with me, really, And I suppose that was a bit of a reason and a foundation why, I've ended up living in 5 continents and many different places over the course of my career so far.
I think that it must have set you up well for the sort of way to transition to other cultures, right? And the differences between people. And it made it very easy for you to probably adopt that.
Yeah, and it's never easy, but you like to be. I think being out of your comfort zone is probably one thing that you learn at an early age, and I certainly feel that I've always looked to try and develop myself by moving maybe country or moving to different locations and maybe push myself sometimes to experience different cultures and different cities and locations or continents. That's been very strong inside. I mean, I suppose that came back from my early time of just basically moving around quite constantly. So the idea of picking a bag up and going to live somewhere else was never particularly a difficult decision.
No, that's good. You were well prepared for
Mm.
hospitality, as we say. So, when you set off to university, what did you envision yourself doing?
Well, that's a good question. I come from a sort of military background. I spent a lot of time living on bases in North Germany and different other locations, and very much within my family. So the primary idea was to join the army. To be frank with you, Lisa, and that
Mm-hmm.
was really what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something active. I wanted to do something that was dynamic. I had a very strong passion for sport all the way through my education, and I thought that was going to be a good fit. And it was an environment that I was very much in and part of, And so that was pretty much the goal. And then, if I'll be frank, my father sat me down one day and said, "Well, look, I can barely tell you what to do. Never mind somebody else telling you what to do for the next 30 years. How does that feel for you if you actually
Mm-hmm.
think about it?" And I suppose I had a bit of a think about it,
I
and I
said, wait.
came to the conclusion that that might not be the right path for me, even though I have a lot of respect for that profession. So I ended up going to university back from Munich, and I ended up studying initially what we call leisure and sport management, so basically management and business of sport, and then got a bit more further into that and did a further education in London at Brunel, looking at sports science and sports psychology for a period.
Mm-hmm. So, when you graduated with your degree, what sorts of positions at that time were available?
This is the mid-90s. There wasn't many positions available for anybody. Right? Never mind, it was not the easiest time to be finding work. Not that it is for any graduate coming out. I spent a few months working in Southern Africa, doing some voluntary work, working in sport and working with young people down in South Africa. And when I came back, I was looking to sort of start a career and start a journey. And I suppose that sport and the idea of health and fitness was very much part of what I did and what I graduated to do. And I joined a company called Holmes Place, which was probably back in the mid-90s, like the Equinox of fitness and exercise, right? So it was like a luxury leisure and health club facility. And this is like, people weren't members of health clubs in the UK. It was like a thing you aspired to, right? And so our fees are pretty high and our facilities are really good, great pools, great gyms, great studio class-based exercise. And I joined them as a sort of really at the beginning, in health club membership sales. And it was a very dynamic company. It was a very fun company to be part of. I have to say that the foundation I had working with Holmes Place was one that has really stayed with me for a long, long time, because we were a very young group of people given a large amount of responsibility at an early age. And so I ended up about 2 years running my own club. I moved to Switzerland and started running a great club in Zurich. And then I graduated through to become a regional director after about 18 months running a group of clubs. Then I graduated again and ended up running a country and doing the development of 7 or 8 leading luxury clubs in Germany. And that was sort of the first 8 years of my career. And it was a good foundation, Lisa. It was a place where, we were responsible for P&L. We were responsible for, teams of 35, 40, 50 people. We had 4,000 or 5,000 members in the club. We were engaging every day with guests and with members. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work, but it was a very competitive environment, a very sports-driven environment. A lot of people come from a similar background as myself, from a sporting background, from sports science backgrounds. And so it's a very good sort of work hard, play hard environment, if that makes any sense. And a lot of engagement with members. So we were teaching classes, we were selling memberships, we were, responsible for this business. And I think that was a great thing to do in my early to mid 20s, to, learn responsibility, learn about P&L, learn about basically running a business, and that was a great foundation.
And wearing all of those hats, doing all of the jobs and being able to basically do everything in the place must have been good training as well.
Yeah, it was from cleaning the sauna and the whirlpool through to jumping in to teach a spinning class, through to picking up the membership forms to sign a member. That was it. It was a very dynamic environment, but it was great fun. And I lived in Switzerland I was in London for 2 years, and I moved to Switzerland and lived in Switzerland for about 5 or 6 years in total. And a very, we were a growing company. It was a dynamic time within fitness clubs and health club development. And I was very fortunate to have had that experience.
For sure. But there was nothing about spa about that, just the overall wellness and fitness aspect.
Yeah, it's, you asked about transition and how did I transition from that? And I suppose that there's probably 2 or 3 things that happened within my career that were maybe interesting. But the first one was, as we were developing the clubs in Germany, the idea of this wellness, this is like late 90s, coming into early beginning 2000. So the clubs were developing. And as we were working in Germany, the ideas of steam, sauna, relaxation, small spa facilities were starting to come into the clubs. So as we were building them, previously it was like, a very small steam, a very small sauna, a load of changing rooms and a big gym. And that was changing. So the pools were turning into more aquatonic pools. There's more relaxation spaces being asked for. There's larger steam and sauna facilities. And we had very small spas. So 3 or 4 treatment room spas were coming in, mostly delivering beauty services or delivering massage services. And so that was my first exposure, I suppose, to spa. And that was the beginning of that sort of upward curve of that assimilation of that as being popular. And then secondly, I have to be very frank and say I worked to a point where I was exhausted a little bit. Maybe burnout would be the word you would use. I mean, at 31, you shouldn't really speak about being burnt out, but it was a very busy time, a lot of travel, a lot of running around. And I started to sort of look into things like therapy and massage treatments, particularly things like shiatsu, reflexology. And I found that really helped me. And so I had this sort of physical sensation of the benefits of call it treatment delivery, right, in combination with movement and everything else. And then I took some time off and had about 6 to 9 months off, went traveling, went to Australia and did some time in the mountains in Switzerland for a while. I was thinking about what the next step would be, and I wanted to combine the idea of exercise and fitness. And I thought this idea of, let's call it spa and wellness, was maybe the next balloon. It was the next maybe career opportunity for development back in 2003. And then had the chance to sort of go and work in Dubai. So I went for my break and was called by a recruiter saying, "Hey, there's this great hotel called Burj Al Arab in Dubai, and do you know it?" I was like, "Oh no, I don't know idea about it. I don't know where's Dubai. No real clue." Which is strange to think now, because obviously, now Dubai is just an international hotspot. But back in the early 2000s, it was a slightly different time. And was asked to go and join Burj Al Arab and basically run the spa, fitness, and well-being of space within that sort of leading 7-star hotel, which I did. That was my first sort of foray into hospitality.
Mm-hmm. So what did you find was different when you got into the hospitality world from the fitness world, as it were?
Well, it was a bit like night and day, to be very frank with you. I suppose that, health clubs are fun, they're dynamic, they're very commercial. And I was very commercial and very sales orientated, right? And we've done a lot of health club sales. And if you know anything about health club sales, it's like selling cars. I mean, that's fundamentally the same system of sales approach is applied, right? So if you sell, you get the next person walking in, and if you don't, you wait until that person fails, right? And that's fundamentally the system of doing membership sales. And so that was pretty much the environment I'd sort of come from. And we were very KPI driven, we were very commercial driven, very top line revenue driven, and we managed P&L. And then when I went to join spa and hotel, obviously there were still those same dynamics, but they were much different, and the whole focus of what we were doing within Burj Al Arab was 100% guest focused, in terms of what we were expected to do, how it was to be, a certain level of refinement, certain level of grace. I would suggest that's a little bit different from sometimes the health club operations.
I would think so.
And so that was a real learning curve, but at the same time, it was engaging with people, and it was talking, and it was dealing with problems and complaints, but it's a slightly different niveau, a slightly different way of operating. And then secondly, I suppose that, within that environment, within Burj Al Arab, at that time within the industry, within spa industry, within hotels, there wasn't really that commercial focus, if that makes any sense. And I don't want to sound like that's speaking ill, but it wasn't seen as a department that was really a generator. Right? It wasn't commercial. It was
like an amenity.
Like an amenity, right? Which is a word which we be very careful to use, because I think semantics are really important. So I remember being in that environment and speaking to my GM and presenting my figures in the morning, the first sort of couple of weeks that I was there, and he sort of looked at me and said, why are you presenting your figures? And why are you presenting, well, the F&B guy does and the rooms guys don't. So I just felt that was appropriate for me to do the same. And so I'm not saying that I did bring a bit of commercial sensibility to that. I mean, the business really, really quickly caught up, but at that time it wasn't really seen as that. So it was much more focused on, again, an amenity, an element that supported the rooms division and the food and beverage division. And obviously that's changed significantly, in terms of how people view wellness and well-being and the role that it plays, But at that time, it was not as commercial. And I suppose the second learning was, obviously I worked with various nationalities in my career, but I never worked with as many nationalities as I did in Dubai, right? I mean, obviously it was like 35 or 40.
Crossroads of the world.
40 nationalities, it was sometimes like being in the head of the UN rather than being one of the leaders of something, which was a very, very mixed international group of people, which was sometimes challenging because cultural differences do play a part, play a role in misunderstanding. But at the same time, it's very, very rewarding because I had, again, this sort of access to such variance and different backgrounds of people and people that were working there. And I think the other point was that the vision for the property in the hotel, which was led by our GM, a gentleman called Luc Delafosse, who was the ex-GM of the Ritz in London. And it really was a service-driven environment, and that was a very, very interesting experience to have, and one that I'm pretty proud of the stuff that we did there.
Well, it seems like it would have been the perfect segue, really, for you to go from being so top line driven and numbers driven into an environment where a lot of attention was paid to what happened when the guest arrived and the whole experience around it, which is, of course, what we focus on in the modern day spa and hospitality world. But of course, we have to make money and be commercial, but you were maybe fortunate at that time that you had the ability to take a breath and think about the service you were delivering.
Yeah, I think so, and that was also one of the drivers when I was looking from the health club business. I think sometimes in your career, you can, I started off getting in the health business. I liked people, and I wanted to help them get fitter. That was fundamentally it. And then, as I started to become a director and a regional director, I was so very far removed from that original sort of goal, and purpose. And I wanted to get back to that. And I think that being within the hotel environment, whereby you're focusing on guest journey, guest experience, treatment delivery, that sort of wonderful service sequence that we all aspire to, both pre and post treatment, was a great thing for us to work with and work with teams of people to deliver that. And it was buzzy, and hotel life is a bit addictive, right? If you work in hotel business, it's very sort of 12 to 14-hour days, and it was 6-day weeks in Dubai then, so it was one day off, and it's an addictive environment, right? I mean, you like getting in, you want to get in early, you want to leave late, you want to meet guests. There's a lot of camaraderie that comes within hotels, and I think people often speak about, and you make some strong friends, both with your guests and with your other team members and broader excom. And it was a good time to be there, and it was a fun time to be there. And Dubai was developing as well, so there was opportunity, and it was new, and people were coming into that, from celebrities to senior politicians down to people on the 50th wedding anniversary, and Burj Al Arab was a place that they aspired to come to. And I suppose that it was a very fun and dynamic time, but a lot of hard work.
Yes, definitely the right place at the right time.
I was quite fortunate with that one, yeah.
And so what led you away from Dubai? What was your next move?
Well, I did about 18 months to 2 years with Jumeirah and with Burj Al Arab, and I sort of realized that I'd come from maybe a regional operational role. I wanted to get back to a regional operational role, and I'd sort of taken a step down, so that's the wrong word, but I had to take a step forward. And I suppose working with Burj Al Arab was a great opportunity to enter the hospitality industry. But then I wanted to go and work with a brand that was really taking wellness seriously and taking spa seriously. And it was really at the center of what the brand's reason and rationale was for being. And I had a chance then through meeting various people and whatever else, and one of my old colleagues from Holmes Place, and then another colleague called Andrew Gibson, who I met in Dubai, and they wanted somebody to go and help to start one of the Six Senses resorts and locations in Europe. And so Six Senses was expanding its spas, third-party management spas in Europe. Six Senses is obviously a wonderful wellness company, always has been. Spas being very central to its overall brand integrity, what it wants to be. And they wanted me to go and open a large operation in Turkey in a place called Bodrum, which is on the Adriatic coast. And so I went to Bodrum and joined Six Senses and started that business, which was like a semi-destination spa in the Adriatic. And then I started taking over as regional operations for the European region. And so that's the reason why I made the jump. Yeah, it was a bit of a night and day jump, because I went from Dubai, which was fundamentally Rolls Royces and international celebrities, to literally a fishing village about 30 kilometers down the road from a place called Bodrum, where it was pretty much, not saying donkeys with sticks on their backs, but it's that sort of very Adriatic, Greek island, Turkish coastline location that was very, very, very different indeed.
So what would you say was the valuable lesson that you got from that Six Senses experience that you took forward?
Well, I think from the Bodrum experience, which was again, very much self-starting. So, Six Sense was a developing company, and with a wonderful brand and wonderful vision, and obviously I was trained to deliver that through my induction. But then when I got to Bodrum, we were very much remote. We're away from the main body of the company, and so you had to take a lot of responsibility. And I suppose my home's place experiences help me and support that.
Mm-hmm.
But you're sort of there alone in the property in a hotel. You're trying to work out, well, we're going to have to hire some people, and what are we going to do? And we took people from the local village, and we had to train them to deliver either services, or in some cases hammam experiences, or bring in massage therapists. So it was a very entrepreneurial experience, I think, working within Bodrum. But I
So
think
then,
that secondly,
go ahead.
I think that from the Sixth Sense experience, I think obviously this is a really early adopter of a group that understood the power and the message of well-being, and also the message of social responsibility as well, right? And so he's very fortunate to be part of that, where they placed wellness and well-being at the center of what the hotel experience was, and they still do. And you can see the success they've actually had from carrying that message forward. So there's a lot of integrity in terms of that message and idea at the time from Sonu, who was one of the founders of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone part of that had a very strong sense of responsibility for, again, social responsibility, for conservation, for community, for supporting local businesses, and also the idea of wellness for our guests and how important it was. And so that was a great environment to be in. It was a very again, dynamic environment to be in, and I was given a lot of responsibility to make my own decisions, which was something I like, and I suppose that the lesson from that is, I suppose, Lisa, that the integrity of your message, the integrity of what you do, particularly within hospitality, people can smell that, right? And they recognize it and they're drawn to it, right? But maintaining the efficacy and authenticity of what you do, I think, creates success. And I think that's really what Six Sense is a testament to.
Mm-hmm. So you went forward into consulting, small group, bigger group. You worked for Resense for a while and ran that arm. And when did you come to Accor?
You missed a bit. I also worked for an owner as well, which is probably one of my most foundational experiences I've had.
Fill us in.
For 2 years. Yeah. So I left Six Senses and had a chance to join an owner's office in the south of France, based near Cannes. And we were developing sort of 2007, developing 7, 8, 9 locations. And the owner at the time was a very wealthy individual based in Monaco, wanted to have somebody to create and develop these mixture of health club, beach clubs, golf courses, and different things. And he sort of headhunted me and tempted me to come over after I'd taken over an senior operations role based in Bangkok, and had a chance to join an owner's office. And it's sort of like 2007, and it was, if you remember that time, it was the height of development, and money's no object, and it was Russians flying in the south of France and everything else, and then we did that for sort of about 12 to 15 months. Then the economy changed significantly.
Yes, it did.
Right. And so that led to, if you work in development, to work for an owner in development, it's pretty much last one turn the lights out. That's it. That's sort of it, right? It's not a soft landing. Let's put it that way. And so that led to a variety of different consult works and some short-term works. I was in Egypt for a period of different time. But I suppose that experience of working for an owner definitely benefits me to this day in terms of understanding an owner's sensibility. But it also started maybe the segue into using my previous experiences and getting into the consultancy side of spa and well-being. Yeah.
So you've had the advantage of the perspective of working in the club, of the top line pressures, and then the experience pressures in a 5, 6, 7-star resort. You understand from the owners, you've been entrepreneurial. I mean, you have so many amazing skill sets, really, Emlyn, that all come together in the position that you have now. In charge of maintaining, growing all of these brands for Accor. And we're at a time in our industry, wellness, when so much is happening. So I'm interested in your perspective on what you think the next few years are going to look like for us.
Well, I mean, I think firstly, it's going to be choppy. It's going to be a sort of, again, a mixed bag of recovery in terms of, let's call it specifically to hotel locations. But at the same time, we're in a very much a blessed industry. And I still strongly believe that we are in a blessed industry, and that will continue to be blessed going forward. The pent-up demand for travel, just thinking about myself or speaking to anybody that I know, I mean, everyone's just desperate.
Desperate to get on a plane somewhere fun.
And go somewhere and do something, right? And I think that there's a lot of, let's call it, opportunity that we can tap into in order to satisfy and sort of support that pent-up demand. And it will be, let's call it, maybe local and regional first, and it'll probably go a little bit further away, and then looking to expand maybe into long-haul recovery sometime in 22, maybe early 2023. But the pent-up demand is certainly there. And I think that for our industry, you've seen what I would call like a super acceleration of the adoption of wellness and well-being practice. We knew that this industry was it was pretty blessed when it came down to what we were actually doing. We're seeing continual growth, adoption of well-being practices, people taking a far stronger interest in their health. But what we're seeing probably now is an super acceleration of that in terms of people's fundamental understanding that they're going to have to take individual responsibility for their own health, and their health is wealth. And the reliance on governmental structures to support your health maybe won't be there in 10 to 15 years, right? And secondly, that small diseases can have a massive impact on you as an individual, whether you're 70 years of age or 27 years of age, right? And so looking to use things like movement and fitness to maintain weight and also keep yourself in a healthy state. The idea of nutrition and its vital importance to overall health and well-being. The emotional element, mindfulness, and how important that is to reduce anxiety and reduce stress. These things are already developing, but now they're super accelerating further into the mainstream. That's great for us because it means that a much broader demographic of guests and people want to take daily steps to improve their health and well-being, and we can capitalize that within our industry.
Oh, well, indeed. I think it's a great time for us. As you say, we've become sort of front and center that we always wanted to be, and consumers are realizing that they are responsible for their own health and well-being. But we're also barking up against a service delivery model that's somewhat dated, one client to one guest. And, how I think it may be a difficult transition for us as we get into fitness, nutrition, coaching. How do you see that working across your brands?
I think that there is a need to address possibly the operating model. We have to be very frank about that. Within certain territories, it's difficult to create margin, right? With a business that has to require very strong labor cost. That's a fundamental part of a business, and therefore the ability to yield stronger incomes from either the type of treatment you're delivering, whether it's going to be more in the advanced facial and advanced body care, use of technology, use of equipment to create results which you can then yield at a higher price, but the same hourly delivery is definitely one area of interest. I think secondly, in terms of leveraging and utilizing our facilities, particularly within hotels to a stronger degree, the use of our spas and our thermal areas and our indoor and outdoor pools and all the different things that we actually have, I think that we can, particularly now, leverage to a much greater degree in those simple half-day and full-day packages and programs that people really going to want, right? I think the pent-up demand for pampering is definitely there, right? That allows you then to also drive in additional add-ons, food and beverage, day use, et cetera, right? Which then, again, increases your yield and your access. I think from a design perspective, I think we can be probably smarter and more efficient in how we're designing our spaces. I mean, if anything comes up on my desk that's over 1,000 square meters, and we're really asking the questions why. I think that's a fundamental within the hotel business that we can actually do and deliver a great guest experience, but without using that really significant real estate that maybe we previously thought we would need to use. And that's just smarter design. a more ROI based design approach. And I think, again, learning from other industries. So, if we want to design a retail space, well, then let's design it like the right retailers do, with
Yes.
testers and with places to sit and great lighting and,
Right. Not
you
just
know,
putting a shelf on the wall and saying, we retail.
not putting a shelf on say we retail, then wondering why no one buys anything that you're stocking, right? So I think that there's some definite lessons. But I think also other models. I think that, I really like, I'm really enjoying and looking at businesses like the recovery business. So the idea of things like hyper-ice and normatec for lymph drainage and recovery, infrared sauna, cryotherapy, flotation, combined with rehabilitative massage and ballistic stretching and some of those fundamental physiotherapy skills. And we're seeing these sort of recovery areas popping up, in different locations, and I think they're going to get even more popular because we're seeing this idea of the everyday athlete. People want to train, they want to train like an athlete, which they're definitely doing. Yeah. They're not recovering like an athlete, and now they want to recover like an athlete, right? So they want to eat like an athlete, they want to train like an athlete, now they want to recover like an athlete. I think that that's an opportunity we can have because it creates fantastic repeat business, right? And it really taps into the skill sets and the knowledges and some of the fundamental educational experiences that our therapists and teams have. And again, it allows you to drive repeat business and repeat custom. I think lastly, I really am a fan of, probably from my Turkish experiences, but the idea of this sort of self-bathing journey.
The hammam tradition.
Yeah, where guests can go on a self-guided cleansing journey that, they can do themselves with their partners, and you can then drive what I would call a sort of higher volume, low cost type of business model, where people are coming into a thermal experience of pool and of water and of cleansing and scrubbing, and there's scrub rooms located there. And then you create spontaneous buy, and you also create food and beverage experiences linked to that again drives an experience, but maybe is a slightly reduced sort of labor expenditure. That's interesting, and you're seeing that happening in larger resort locations, right, where it sort of works. I mean, with GoCo, there's a wonderful place they've got called Glen Ivy, which is 700-800 people a day coming into that business. It can be done on a smaller scale. You can do that within a hotel context and everything else. So a spa doesn't have to just be treatment rooms. I think that looking at different business models that you can do. Probably lastly, I'd say, Lisa, looking to leverage the fitness facilities within our hotels. We're not doing fitness as well as we could. We're not learning the lessons about what I would call high value, low cost membership, which is basically you go online, you buy a membership, you go to the club, you don't see anybody. And that's pretty normal within, strip malls across America and CrossFit clubs and anywhere else. But within the hotel business, we build 200 square meter fitness facilities, and then we simply wait for a hotel guest to come. And again, those days I think are coming to a close, and we need to leverage those assets in a much stronger way. And there's definite business models we can use to do that.
Well, those are great points, Emlyn, and I am sure you are on target with them. I think it's going to be an interesting few years as we watch how we integrate spa into those other wellness modalities. And I think in the hotel sense, taking the spa out of the 4-walled 1,000-meter, that's 10,000 square foot facility, and integrating it more into the overall space. So we shall see. My money's betting that you are correct, however.
I hope so. Thank you, Lisa.
One last question before we go, Emlyn. You've lived in a lot of places. What was your favorite?
Oh, I don't know what I can tell. Everyone will complain if I say there's one favorite. I have a very strong affinity for my time in Bangkok. I was in Bangkok twice, 6 years and a year. So that's 7 years in total. And there is something very wonderful about Thai culture and Thai lifestyle, and the chance to travel through Southeast Asia, which I did extensively. It's a great lifestyle. It's a wonderful country. It is really the land of smiles. I suppose that's one place that I did love. And I did like Bodrum. I think about my Bodrum time quite memorably. It was a very, you live by the Adriatic, you go to the sea, you can see 25, 30 meters down to the bottom of the ocean. It's living by the seas, an incredible experience for anybody, but particularly in that part of the world. Food's fantastic, weather's fantastic. We worked seasonally as well, which, if you know, in the hotels, we worked really hard from like April until sort of October, November, and then the season went away. And so it means you had that really sort of 8 months of really, really hard work, and then 3 or 4 months where you could not say take it easy, it's the wrong word, but recuperate would be the word. But Bodrum was a wonderful experience. But I have to say, on balance, we'll probably say my time in Thailand.
Well, it was great to hear that and all of your sage advice. Emlyn Brown, Global VP of Wellbeing for Accor. We look forward to seeing what comes next in the spa and wellness industry. And thank you for joining us on StarrCast.
Thank you, Lisa. My pleasure.